everybody. Welcome to another episode of Straight Outta BS podcast. I want to thank you guys for continuing to share the videos, liking them, and just like helping me get out into the algorithm more. Like I said in a few previous videos, I've had people who are not involved with the industry tell me that our videos are getting into their algorithms, so that's awesome. Let's keep pushing the algorithm. Let's just keep getting the word out there and educating people, because that's really one of the best ways to enact change, in my opinion. With that being said, I want to do a moment of silence for the person still suffering with intrusive thoughts or anything like that. So on the count of three, I'm going to do a moment of silence. 1, 2, 3. Okay, thank you for that. And I just want to do a shout out to my Patreon members. I actually have it listed. When this video comes out, it'll be listed, so your names will be up there, but I feel like it's being repetitive. So I'm just going to say thanks to the Patreon members. I'm not going to say your names because it's already in the thing, but thank you. I appreciate you more than you know, and links are in the description if anybody wants to contribute in that way. Not expected, but it's totally appreciated. And everything goes back into the podcast. So with that being said, I want to go ahead and introduce my guest for the day. Go ahead and introduce yourself and where you went and what year.
Excuse me. Hi, my name is Emily Zimman. Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be on this podcast and just relate to other survivors. And yeah, so I could talk about this for hours, but the first program I went to was called the Sweetwater program. It was in Tucson, Arizona, and it was like an adolescent unit. Like, it was a residential treatment center. It was an adolescent unit that doesn't exist anymore. I called after my records and I was like, hey, like, do you have my records? Like, I was curious to find out more, and they said, no, sorry, we don't. And the program no longer exists. And part of me was like shocked, and then part of me was like, good. Like, I don't know. It's really a complicated topic. There's like a lot of layers to it, but yeah, I went to an all-girls adolescent unit in Tucson, Arizona, and I was there for 90 days to the dot. Like, on my discharge date, I was like, I had to like do what I had to do to get out on my discharge date, because it was 90 days minimum.
Yeah. What year was this?
2010. My transportation, I was transported. And transportation to me is like, I'm sure it's been talked about on your podcast before. My experience of transportation is like, it's just like the ultimate betrayal, right? Like, that's kind of what the industry wants. But like, a little bit about my story is I grew up in Manhattan on the Upper East Side, and my parents were like pretty strict. I mean, they're great people, but they wanted me to be home at curfew, and they didn't want me going out at night to clubs, and they didn't want me to be, doing drugs. And, that's fair for parents. I mean, I understand that. I have a lot of like empathy. Like, we didn't have like find my location or like, any of the safety measures that we have now when I was a teenager. So like, my parents were like constantly just like, where is my daughter? Because there's millions of people in the city and we can't find her and she's not coming home. So like, they were frantic to get me help. And I understand that piece of it, like my parents' piece of it, but then the industry came in, and I was never really told, like, my mom and dad would like want to go to family therapy, and I was like, no. And I was a little bit stubborn when it came to therapy and stuff like that. I just didn't want to do that. I was put in therapy when I was 3 years old. Like, I remember I had to be like dragged in the office, and I just hated it. Like, I didn't want to do it. And so I think that's why they kind of, my parents made the decision to do it in this way, because I wouldn't have gone voluntarily. And that part is true. However, the whole process of like being transported, it's like, my experience was I was out. My parents started to give up on the curfew thing. They started to give up on the, whatever. Like, I would show up like towards the end. And I should have I was always kind of like intelligent. I should have noticed that was weird, like that they weren't making rules anymore, because they were making plans for me to spend the summer away. And I had no idea, except for, I'll get to it, but I talked to my dad. And I had a feeling towards the end. But yeah, there was like starting to be no curfew, no questions, no nothing. And I was like, this is awesome. Like, they're starting to finally come around and like, because I had to lie. I had to be like, I'm sleeping at a friend's or I'm watching a movie at a friend's. Meanwhile, I'm out at a club. And I think it's more safe just to be honest. But I was kind of, conditioned to lie, unfortunately, because I wanted to do it be with my friends and party. I was, a high school kid. And so that made me have to lie a lot and make up stuff. And my parents, it would get back to my parents because my behavior, I mean, I have mental health issues. So like my behavior when I drank was not normal from the beginning. And normal is like I don't really like that word, but it was just abnormal, my behavior, like, because I had bipolar disorder. So it would kind of come out. I think when I was like 17, it was just sort of like hypomania at that point. But like it would come out like when I was drunk, it would come out, but I was kind of always like happy-go-lucky for the most part. There wasn't a lot of darkness before. It was more just like this girl has a problem with substances and she's a little wild, but I don't think it was like very problematic, but some people may disagree. I don't know. It's hard to be the like narrator of that stuff because like I was on drugs, but um, you know. So anyway, I was at a club and I lived on an apartment on the Upper East Side. It was like 2 apartments on each floor, and back then, my parents didn't really lock the door. And I had a friend with me and I was like, the door was locked. And it was like 5:30 in the morning. I had just like been at a club. I was drinking, I was doing drugs. And the door was locked, but I didn't think about it. I was like kind of like, all right. And my dad was like, I was like, oh, I have my friend, she's sleeping over. And my dad was like, she's not sleeping here. And I was like, okay, because I was used to him being kind of strict. And so I like went off to my room and I fell asleep. And then I don't really know the time frame. It's like when it's a traumatic event, at least in my eyes, like it's so hard to remember details. I just know I was asleep for a very short period of time. And I woke up. Oh, and a couple of nights before this, I said to my dad, are you sending me somewhere? Because I had a couple of friends go to wilderness or therapeutic boarding school, just like from, other schools that I knew. And I was like, in my school, and I was like nervous it was going to happen to me. And so I said to him, I was like, am I going somewhere? Because I have this feeling. And he was like, no. And I like asked him later, I was like, what was that about? Because you promised me. And he was just like, I was worried you were going to die and I didn't want to tell you. And I was like, okay. I kind of get it because like I would have been a flight risk. I would have ran. That's how I think. Like if there's a situation where I have no choices, like I was a child, I was always smart. Like I knew I didn't have a choice. And that kicked in when I got there. So I woke up and there was my parents over my bed and they were crying. And then there was a strange man. I don't know who he was. I don't know what his name is. And I kind of like was like, I knew you were gonna do this. And I don't, it's so hard to like remember exactly what I said, but I was like, get out, like get out of my room. And my parents and this strange guy, whoever he was, an interventionist, I guess, they left. So I think they tried to do some sort of like telling me, but like once I wasn't hearing it, they left. And I didn't want to hear a single thing he had to say or they had to say at that point. And so they left and I tried to go back to sleep. And then I hear more people coming in. And my bed is like facing not the door. Like, I don't know how to explain it. I guess my bed was not facing the door. So then I realized that there's 2 strange people in my room. One of which is a woman. She was like from the South, I think. It was a Southern woman. And there was like this really big guy. And then I was like, what is this? Is this am I going to get gooned? Because like I heard about this before. And I was. And like, it was sort of like, I don't know how else to explain it, but flight response. They say, do you want to do it the easy way or the hard way? And like, I don't think there is an easy way. So I kicked her, the woman, in the stomach, and then that made her more mad. Like, it wasn't really smart, but I was trying to get out of it. And I thought I had this attitude kind of, I was always good at advocating, even if it was for the wrong things. And I was like, I can get out of this though. Like I thought I could get out of it, and I guess I couldn't. And they basically were like yelling at me, pack your stuff, pack fast. You can bring your iPod. That was a lie. You can pack whatever you want. And I was in like such a like trauma response, like fight or flight mode. Like I was like, fine. Like I just did everything they told me, because I started to realize they were like, we're going to use cuffs if you don't, we're going to use a straight jacket, we're this is this. And I was like, all right, then I'll just fucking pack. Like I didn't have like a choice. I hope I can curse. And so I was like, I guess I'll just pack my stuff. And so I like threw things in a suitcase, like comfy clothes or whatever. Like I had a Care Bear. I don't know where he is. Like I lost him recently. I brought my Care Bear with me, and they basically dragged me out of my apartment. I was kicking and screaming and crying, and my parents were in the apartment. And actually, my nanny, I call her my nanny, she's been with my family since I'm 2. She was there. And I had a feeling she would be there. They told my sisters, I have 2 older sisters, they told them not to even be at the apartment. But my sisters weren't home, or at least that's what I was told. Sometimes it's hard to know what to believe. But my nanny told me she was there, and I was calling for her because, like, at that point, I was like so livid at my parents. I like wanted my nanny, so I was like, Karen, help me. And she told me she was just crying, like in the back room, like there was nothing she could do. And then so like I grew up in Manhattan, so like my doormen saw it, and like my doormen like watched me grow up, and some of them, the ones who were on shift that morning, knew me since I was a little girl, and they were crying, and they sort of like saw me thrown into this car. It was just so like it was like almost wasn't human. Like I was like a package. Like it was like crazy. And there was a driver, and he stayed pretty quiet the whole time, but and then I was handed letters, and I watched a video about another survivor, and it was like the same font and everything. It kind of creeped me out, like, and it was like very similar. Like it's almost like scary, unsettling how similar our stories are. Like it was both a letter from my mom and my dad. We're sending you to get help. We love you so much. You need this. Like, you've been acting like disobedient and this, and this, and like they're gonna help you here. And I was just sort of like, because they weren't saying anything. And that's another common thread. Like I didn't know I was just going for 90-day minimum. I thought I was going for the rest of high school. I thought I was going to boot camp. Like I had no fucking idea what was happening. And they were laughing. The guy said to me, "What are you going for? Like angel dust or something?" Like he was being very trying to shame me. And I all I could do was really cry. I did try and talk back to them a little, and then I learned not to. It was like a survival mode kick in. It was like, don't talk back, because they're not going to help you. They're not here to help you. And I think I knew that. And so my parents actually chartered a plane for me to go. And I almost wish, I know that sounds ungrateful, that I was in a public airport so I could have been like help, but it wasn't that way. It was a private plane, and the driver took me up to the plane, and I was trying to open doors in the car. Like I was trying to jump out. Like I was like, I was not messing around. Like I was like in such a panic mode that I didn't even care if I didn't care. I just wanted out of the whole situation, and I didn't even know what was coming. So, because I didn't know that, these horrible things happen at these places, right? Because they typically look like nice places. And, sometimes they're not. Like the wilderness thing, I never went to wilderness. I have a lot of empathy for people who went through that, because my program was a little different. It was almost like a summer camp look to it. And we slept in nice beds, and we had like a nice shower, but that doesn't mean we weren't abused. So it's complicated. It's like you have to have a lot of empathy for all survivors, because it's just everyone takes what they take from it, but what I took from it was I didn't realize it until later, but it was like a really traumatic experience. So basically I'm on the plane, just like curled up in a little ball, like crying. And they didn't say anything to me, except laugh or talk amongst themselves. And um, but on our way to the plane, the driver, who I guess he's not really part of the industry, he was just a driver. He like put his hand on my shoulder, and I'll never forget him. And hopefully one day I'll find who he was if he's still alive. This was so long ago. He was like, "You're gonna be okay." Like he put his hand on, and I was like, "Oh my God!" Like no one else is being nice to me. He was so nice to me. Like just hearing those words was like really, I'll never forget that. And so anyway, I'm on this flight with them and we land and I'm in like dry heat. I like notice I'm in the desert. Bless you. And I remember there was like a private plane. I don't take them often, but like I asked her, "Can I please go to the bathroom?" Like I was trying to like get into the airport to talk to somebody because I had no phone, no nothing. I was cut off from the world at that point. Cut off from my family, the world, everything. I was in the hands of these people. And she was like, "I'll go with you, but you can't go by yourself." And so I was like, "Fine." And that was something I said so much. I was like, "Fine." And they would always tell me like the acronym for fine is like fucked up, insecure, neurotic. I forget. Like they always just like told me all these things that were like, maybe that's true. I don't know, but like some of it was not helpful. But actually, most of it was not helpful. But it's hard not to pivot. Sorry. So she took me to the bathroom. I said, "Can I just please wash my face?" And she was like, "Yeah, like I'll let you wash your face. Like I have to earn washing my face after I'm crying for 6 hours on a plane where I was kidnapped." Like it's so weird. It's so sick. And so then there was a car waiting for me, which was from the treatment center. There was a woman driving, and I remember the song like Wonderwall was playing. And I always thought that was a coincidence, but I don't think it's a coincidence because like the lyrics are sort of like, "Today is gonna be the day, they're gonna throw it back to you." Like, I don't know. I feel like in 2010 they could have like hooked up an iPod and had that going. Maybe I'm just a little crazy from all of this, but I got in the car and the lady from the treatment center told me how long I was going to be there. And she said 90 days minimum. And I was like, okay. And like, that's where like the survival mode kicks in, at least for me. Maybe not everyone, like everyone after they are exhausted and traumatized and coming off drugs. I needed to fucking detox, by the way. I wasn't detox there at all. I just sort of had to like accept that hopefully my family would get me out of there. But it became clear that wasn't going to happen. So I was brought to the unit. No, not to the unit. I was brought to my therapist. I will not name her because that place is still open, just that like adolescent unit is not there anymore. And I said, "I want to talk to my parents right now." Like I was like, immediately, "I need to speak to my family. I need to leave. I don't belong here." And she said, "No, you can't." She said, "When you get to a certain phase, then you can write them." And I was like, "What? What do you mean phase?" And she's like, "There's a whole like list of guidelines and rules, like they'll read it to you." And I was like, "I can't even talk to them on the phone like today?" And she was like, "No." And then that's when I was like, okay. So I can't even write them. And by the way, all letters, all calls, like this is another common thread. You are never alone with your parents, ever. So, and they tell your parents, if she says this and this happened, I'm being abused, I want to go home, please take me home. None of that. They tell them, they coach them basically to not believe you. And that's another common thread. So no matter what I said, it didn't matter because I was not, my parents were manipulated as well. And they were, they thought, because the place I went to was beautiful. It was like this like dude ranch in Arizona. But the adolescent unit, I mean, we had school. First of all, I was there June through September. There was no school. We would sit in a trailer. They had acres and acres of land to build a nicer school for the adolescents. They didn't. The teacher was a nice guy. I'm not gonna say his name. He was nice. I don't think he knew what was going on. But like we would go in the trailer every day. We had school except the weekends. It was summer. We would color. Then they would like pull us out, color, or like do like random, like read whatever we could, listen to whatever we could. It was all very regimented. Like if we got a letter from a friend, even if they were approved, if they didn't like something in that letter, it was contraband. Even like some things my family sent me were put in contraband, like, and that's what they called it, contraband. And once you get out, they give you your contraband. So I got tons of letters and pictures and things that my friends were sending me that I had no idea was being sent. So anyway, I was told about like the phase system and like, you know, the graduation part of it. And I just knew kind of like, all right, I think I'm being a little repetitive, but it's like I have to do exactly what they tell me to do and act like I want to be in these groups and participate and not be disobedient, even though that's kind of in my nature to be a little bit to question things and to, you know, make sure people have the right motives and intentions. But in that case, I pretended to like them all. I didn't ever, hopefully to my memory, throw any of the girls under the bus because that was another thing they tried. They tried to pit us against each other. And luckily I was with a group. I mean, I don't want to cry, but for the most part, I mean, people came and went over the 90 days, but like we had a really special bond, luckily. And I think for the most part, they cared a lot about me and they looked out for me. And they have like healed and they're doing great, the ones I keep in touch with. And like some of them did not make it. That's the reality of this industry. It's horrible. But like I've formed really, really special, genuine friendships in those places that I'll always be grateful for. And like, you know, we don't keep in touch. I don't keep in touch with all of them. I don't even remember some of their names, to be honest. But, you know, I do remember the ones that really like took me under their wing because once I got to the unit, I mean, I was in such shock. Like I was I don't know another word. I was in shock because I was like, I don't have anybody right now. My own family just did. I mean, I consider my transportation probably the worst thing that ever happened to me. And because my family was behind me getting kidnapped. It's like one of these like crazy things. And so that's probably my worst trauma of them all. And so when I got on the unit, I think the girls were used to it. Like they didn't think that it was anything that big of a deal. It was almost kind of like normalized in that facility to see people in shock, see people in panic, but we don't talk about it because then you get written up. So there's like at this particular facility, and I think other facilities are similar, but where I was, you were graded every day on a sheet, and they had this thing called Please Improve, and it would be for things that, I mean, I don't have my records. I wish I could find them because they have like a graded sheet. And there's like there you have to check all the boxes and like they say if you do like okay or like it's I don't even know how to explain it really. But I would get please improves for things that were, in my opinion, like I don't know, it ingrained this thing like about constantly being corrected. And I don't like to be corrected. I have really bad ADHD. Like the girls would laugh about it because it's funny, but I would like wear my shoes on the wrong feet or like my shorts would be inside out or like, you know, things like just with my learning disabilities. And I would get written up for that all the time. And I just learned to stop arguing about it. And I was like, yeah, sorry, I'll fix it. Sorry, sorry. Like people even tell me today, why do you apologize so much? And it's because I think of what I went through there because it was like, yeah, sorry, because I didn't want to be secluded. Because if you were disobedient enough at that place, you went on what was called one-to-ones. They didn't say seclusion, but that's what it was. And when the girls would come back, this is another common thread, but I was at an all-girls facility. When a girl would come back, we could not really look at her, talk to her. She was with a staff member, like off to the side. She ate alone. She needed somebody. She needed empathy. She was completely ostracized. And we were told that if we supported her, we were going to get written up. So like, in cases like that, I listened, but I was never like to a staff, like, hey, this person's not following the rules. I just don't, that's not my style. So anyway, I mean, some people tried to like get mad at me because I had my mom send me like makeup and products because we were allowed to wear makeup. We were allowed to wear clothes because honestly, this is, I didn't know if I was going to talk about this or not, but I will because it's important. So there is an adult unit. There's no more adolescent unit, but when I was there, obviously that's where I was. And we went to public AA, NA meetings. The first meeting when I got there, I didn't even know really what AA was. I mean, I'm in recovery now. I have 7 years sober, but like I did not know what that meant. And that was my first AA meeting. It was the first night I was there. I could barely eat anything because I was so shocked. I had like a little bit of watermelon and they said, oh, you must have an eating disorder too. We'll add that to your list. I didn't. And then like they just said, okay, you have to be at movie night. And like it seemed like normal enough that we had a movie night. We weren't hiking. Like that's why for a long time I was like, you know what? I don't think I was abused there because I hear about wilderness and like I read Paris's memoir and I was like, she was gone for 11 months. Like, who am I to talk about this if like I went for 90 days? Well, I went for 180 days. So I'll get to that, but I hope I'm not talking too much. So then I remember, so the day that I got there, when I learned that there was no communication with my family, they gave me a journal and I would write in my journal and like I have it. It was like, it would be like, dear mom and dad. And then I was so like shocked and traumatized and coming off drugs. And I mean, yeah, there was no detox. They took my, drug tests. They weighed me because they cared what drugs I was on, I assume, and if I had an eating disorder. And, I think they took my vitals once and there was no proper detox. I mean, I drink alcohol all the time. Like it's dangerous not to detox somebody like that, but they didn't. And then, so that was like, I didn't even know about like the like just scientific parts about like detox and all that back then, but like, that's really dangerous. Like I needed to be properly detoxed and I wasn't. And so I showed up there exhausted, traumatized, angry, at the world, at my family, at myself, like everything. I was just in like the most vulnerable spot I think I've ever been in my life. And I just was like, who do I have other than me? And that was kind of like pervasive, like self-preservation and like, to a degree, like I said, I always looked after my friends. I'm just like that. But like it was self-preservation among this like industry and these people. Because like the doctor was so weird. I didn't even know. This is another thing. Like he told me I was on Prozac. I never saw the pill bottles. I don't know what they had me on there.
Like like what do they call it? The not libido effect. Where they give you placebo effect.
Yeah.
Like
No,
trying to
like there would
placebo
be
you being like you're on it when you're not.
yes. I'm not sure what they were doing. They would give us our meds every night in like a little cup.
I was gonna ask you about meds. Did they try and load people up with meds? Because the common thread is they'll either load people up with meds from what I've seen, or they'll take them off of them completely. So what were they?
I don't think we're really that medicated, no, because I don't remember seeing a lot of sedation on my unit, no. And I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing because we all had mental health issues. But you know, like so like the please improve stuff. So Cottonwood, I mean, unfortunately it's still open, but the unit I was at, unfortunately, the unit I was at does not exist anymore. So I feel safe talking about that piece of it. And this was also in 2010. So that's 13 years ago. So I remember we went to the public NAA meetings every single night.
And that's A and AA, like Alcoholics Anonymous
and Narcotics Anonymous. Yeah. And we went to meetings with adults in Tucson, Arizona. And we were children and we were all young girls. So that was a problem. And I didn't realize it back then, but they were exposing not only us to the world outside, like, but we could never be by ourselves. So that, I guess there was a safety aspect in that way. Like if people, at the AA meetings, I think we could have re-socialized. Like I blocked some of it out, but like there was this rule that we couldn't talk to the adults because we ate in the same dining hall as the adults. And then they closed the door once we got our food. But it would be a common thread because the adult unit, I mean, it was co-ed. And I remember I once got talked to because there was an adult male who like looked at me and I didn't look away. And I was sort of like, sorry, like again, like I said, sorry. And I was like, well, what do you, like in my head, I was like, what do you want me to do? We share the same dining hall. If somebody looks at me and I don't look away right away, like it was almost like a no-win situation with the please improves. Like, you know, you're romanticizing your life at home, please improve. Like I was just talking about my friends and like memories. Like that was all I had when I was there, was like memories. I had like books and music, but that was all kind of like regulated. Like when we would be in the car, if we would play radio, but it was the summer 2010, so that song "Love the Way You Lie" was really popular, and they would just shut it off. Like songs about partying, even if it was like we listened to "Dynamite" by Taio Cruz probably almost every single day. That was like one of the only ones I didn't change, and that's like, you know, we were not able, like if somebody burned us a CD, like a parent or like a friend that was approved, like they would go through and listen to the whole tape. And if there was a single thing about drugs, alcohol, partying, like anything that was like even a little provocative, you couldn't get your CD. So I learned, I was like, I'm just going to check out their approved CDs because like my parents would burn me them and then like they would realize, oh, sorry, this song was not appropriate. You can't have it anymore. And so after a while, at like the second month, I was like, when I could get the mail, I was like, just stop with the CDs. It was too hard. And so I would check out whatever they approved, but the books that they approved that were really like, you know, books about like addiction and like codependency and like all these really heavy topics, but we can't listen to a song about alcohol. It just didn't make any sense back then. And it doesn't make any sense to me now. But yeah, so the please improve thing was difficult because of my learning disabilities and like I couldn't do certain things right. And I remember, this is horrible. I don't like to admit this part of the story, but I almost got secluded because we would get tea. They gave us like tea and we would have like this thing. It was called like rec time. It was like after the A meeting, we could like make a little food. And that's why some of the longest time I was like, yeah, like mine was a summer camp. We had a pool, we had a gym, we had a chef, we had nice beds, but like we were mentally mind fucked all day long. From 6:45 to 9:30, lights out. We were completely under their control. And then even when lights were out, they would come in the rooms. It was like 3 a room on the unit and just shove flashlights in our face. So like I barely was getting like proper sleep. I was detoxing. I was lonely. I was mad. And there was just a lot of stuff that was going on that was like manipulative. And I remember not picking up on it because they were so good at what they were doing. So I finally was able to write my parents, and I did write them, I want to go home. They sent out those letters. There's some stuff in my journal that was not sent out, or I'm not sure, but it doesn't matter. No matter what I said, I wasn't going home. And then there was this thing called Family Forum. And this I think is important to bring up because it kind of is like the attack therapy, like how it's so inefficient. So it wasn't a private family meeting at all. All the girls' families came at the same time, and there were girls there, by the way. When I got to the unit, there was a girl there who was 12 years old, and I was kind of like, I thought this was a drug addiction center. Like, what is she doing here? And then I came to realize that people were there for all different reasons. Like, it wasn't just rehab, even though it was called an addiction rehab. Like, some girls were there for something called family problems, and I'm not judging them, but like, everybody has family problems. You know what I mean? So I was like, what are they doing here? Like, I know I have an addiction, but like, what is going on? And so when family forum came around, like we were all close, the girls. So like we were actually excited to meet each other's family. And like when I saw my parents, like I remember I was in the dining hall with the girls and I was like laughing and smiling because like we had built this bond and like I knew I was finally gonna, it was after 60 days of not seeing them. They came to Arizona for family forum and my uncle and my grandma were able to visit me too. And I mean, I was alone with my grandma. I remember that, but I just like wanted to like hug her and be with her. I didn't even tell her like I want to leave. I think I must have, but she was, she listened to her daughter or my mother. Whatever. So when I turned around and I saw that my parents were there and like there was this big smile on my face, which is so like, I don't know, sad because like
Well, you were brainwashed. You were brainwashed.
yeah, I was so brainwashed and like seeing my parents like showing up because I was so cut off from them and everything was like so monitored and like when I was starting to like voice my concerns, the phone it was hung up. So like when I saw them there, I was like, okay, like they're gonna get me out. This is the time they're gonna hear me and I'm gonna get out of here because the staff is gonna try and separate us. But if they knew what I was going through, they'll take me out. So Family Forum happened and it originally starts with like this group thing. And this is another common thing is like all of our groups were group therapy. Like we got pulled aside for doctor's appointments and therapy appointments, like I think once a week. But other than that, we're hearing people's like deepest, we don't really know each other. We don't sign a confidentiality agreement, I don't think. Like I don't remember that far, but like I remember just being put on the unit. And so like we're hearing their deepest fears, their biggest like, traumas, like what brought them there, whatever that may be in group every day. And we know each other's like deepest, darkest things. And we would have community meeting. So it was all kind of like attack therapy and they wanted us to fight. They wanted us to be in conflict. And then it was like conflict resolution, like it was like all this, like these sheets, these worksheets, like in group, like constantly. And unluckily, for the most part, my group was just a good group. We looked out for each other. I'll say that like one more time. But so a family forum, everyone's parents at the same time, group processing, deep, deep, deep stuff and personal stuff, like family, personal stuff. Like I heard some things that I really shouldn't have heard. You know what I mean? Like both maybe the parents felt that way and the kids, but it was told that this was family forum and this is how we do it here. And so what?
So was it just a big group of all the parents and all the kids there in the circle? Was that?
Yes, and then they did this thing where they would pull. Okay, so I blocked out this with my mother, but it was like it's called psychodrama. I'm in social work, so it's like a form of like where you act things out. And or like, it's like so usually like a therapist will like say it can be helpful as an adult to like talk to somebody and pretend that they're there and like get your feelings out, but in this case the person is really there. Like so like I don't remember what happened with my mother during this point, but I remember what happened with my father. And my father, I love him so much. I really do, and he probably is like my like voice of reason, like someone who I really trust and love. And like this broke our trust for a while. Like just honestly, this industry just I couldn't trust him. And I remember what happened with him. So the staff member said something, and it's a trauma memory, so I don't remember details, but it was really simple. It was like, talk to your daughter. And all of a sudden, my dad, he wasn't really a crier, he starts like breaking down, like, like panicking, and I'm sitting across from him like this. And I'm like, like I went like, oh my God. And I just like shut down. Like emotionally, I just was like, I can't watch this. Like they wanted me to watch this and they wanted him to feel like he was getting his feelings out in a healthy way. But to me, it was like I did this to the person I love the most in the world. And like, I'm such a horrible human being. And it was not helpful for me. but I don't really talk to him about it much because like he's moved on. So I try and respect that as much as I can. Like he gives me permission to advocate and he's supportive and amazing and lovely, but he has moved on from all of this. For the most part. I mean, as much as he can. And as much I try to, move on from it as much as I can too, but I have PTSD from this stuff. So then they had us go rock climbing, which I was sucked at because I have learning disabilities. I couldn't do the harness, but they wanted us to like climb to the top in front of our parents, and it was all really manipulative forms of treatment. And then kind of like to fast forward, like I had a family meeting when they were there to visit, and I said, I'm going home. They said, no, we want you to go to a boarding school after this. You're not going back to New York. And I said, yes, I am. I said to my parents, and I'm drinking when I get home. This is like almost unheard of. I was like, by the way, put it on my contract because we had these like life contracts, like you, which is part of like discharge planning, but your family signs it, you sign it, and it's like a contract. I don't even know if it's like a legal document or not. I haven't looked that part up.
Get you sent back there? Is it if you don't act right, you get sent back there? Is that?
Or to another facility, yes.
Yeah. Same thing that happened to us. Very, very interesting. So crazy how many different places. That's like one of the most common threads. They almost all of them do a life contract if you end up graduating from their facility. They force it.
Right. And so in my mind, after the transportation, that contract was real. Whether it was real or fake in real life, like what I was signing, I was like, if my parents had, the guts or whatever to send me away like that, if I sign this contract and I don't live up to it, I'm fucked. So I was able to get out. This is where the advocation comes in. It's like not funny, but it is like I was like, put it on my contract. I'm socially drinking when I get home because my parents said no narcotics. And I was like, fine, but I'm 17 years old in New York City and my friends drink. I'm going to drink when I get home. They all wanted me to, the recommendation for my discharge was to go to another program. And I said, absolutely not. My parents heard me with that. I said, I will never forgive you. I will never speak to you again. You will never hear from me again if you do that. When I turn 18, you were out of my life if you do that to me. And I said that in front of the professionals. I didn't give a fuck. My parents were there. And so they made up my life contract, and it was basically I was able to socially drink. I don't know how common that is. I was able to convince them to put that on my contract. And if I tested positive for any narcotics, I was going back. And there's also another list of rules, but I paid it, since I'm an alcoholic, I paid attention to that piece of it. But there's also like a rule of like conduct and how you behave yourself and what you talk about and what you share about the facility. And that kind of instills like, that's why so many survivors don't even realize they were abused until later. I think there's a lot of anger we carry for a long time, but like we can't get to the root of it because we're so fucked up in the head because of what the mental abuse every day. And so I was able, my mom came and picked me up. I got all my contraband. I saw that my friends were so excited to have me home. I had my like my cell phone back, like the little things in life. That's one of the things I took from it. Like a cup of coffee, like friendship, like laughter, like that stuff is really important because it can be taken away from you in a second. And that's what all of this taught me is like life can change in an instant. And so that's the only good I've got out of this is like perspective and empathy, like deep empathy for others. And so I got home and I am an alcoholic. Like, sometimes they'll tell people you're an alcoholic and they're not, but I actually am. So I was like, yeah, I can socially drink when I get home and I'll be fine. And I just won't smoke weed and I won't do coke because like those are my drugs of choice, alcohol, marijuana, and cocaine. And I was like, I'm just gonna drink. Like I'll be able to have some like wine with my friends and like smoke a cigarette and I'll be okay because I could smoke cigarettes too. And that was on my contract too. And I thought I could do that, but like marijuana was a huge love of mine. And once I drank, I was, the world wasn't going to stop being in orbit because I went to rehab. Everyone was still doing the same stuff when I got home. And they do teach you about people, places, and things. And like that kind of there's truth to that. Like when you return to an environment that's, I don't know, maybe not serving you the most, like, shit's going to happen. And I got there and I was drinking and I was like, okay, for a little bit. And then one night we all went out and I drank a little too much. And I did coke and I smoked. And I was like, but the fucking contract. And I was like, oh my God. I was like, so this is a little dark, so I'll put a trigger warning for people. But we were at a rooftop bar and I was, really fucked up. So I've heard about it through a friend, like what they noticed. And like I have like my narrative. But I like walked to like towards the end of the bar. We were on the top and I was like ready to end my life. Like I was like, all right, but I was thinking about it. I was like, okay, so I signed this contract. I fucked up. I know my parents are not going to listen to me. Like my voice means nothing right now. It's all in the hands of the professionals. So I was like, I have two choices. I can either go back to a facility like that or I can end my life. And I was going to choose to end my life. That's how bad it was. And I was just thinking because it was a big decision and I was going to do it and I was ready to do it. But somebody noticed me off in the corner and she said, Emily's off in the corner. She's wasted and I'm going to go get her. So I'm grateful to her to this day. She pulled me whatever off. And then there was a suicide attempt. So it was a relapse and a suicide attempt. And then I went back for 90 days to a different facility. And that was like horrible. And I take accountability for like, a little bit of entitlement, like thinking that I was like an exception to the rule. Like I was going to be able to, there was a little bit of entitlement there. Like I thought that I was like, I was exempt from going back and I could just drink and this and this and this. But when I drink, by the way, after those facilities, like it then came, they called it episodes. And I was really confused because I was never an angry drunk. Like, yeah, I was like a little wild. I might cry. I might text you some crazy stuff. I might, hook up with your boyfriend. Like I was a young girl. Like I did some things I was not proud of before I got sent away. But after I got sent away, and I think this is important to touch on, it was different. It was like the survival mode and the PTSD and the flight response. Like my nervous system was all fucked up. My brain was all fucked up. Like I was just all fucked up in the head because I was like brainwashed into thinking I was like this like parasite to everyone I loved and cared about. I was ruining everyone's lives. Like no wonder I had suicidal ideation. I'm going to give a trigger warning to that too, because like I was conditioned to think you are the biggest, most awful human being in the world and you deserve to die. And your family doesn't give a fuck about you anyway. So like, that's kind of like, what they would say is like, no one's coming to get you. Like you can think that they'll change their mind, but it was like, they would like kind of like laugh at me. They're like, well, it's like day 82. Are they here? And it was just like kind of like mean spirited, but they were trying to give the tough love, which is another thing about this industry. It doesn't fucking work. It's really not effective at all. So, because when you leave those places, at least in my experience, I left there not only with PTSD, but trust issues, abandonment issues. And I don't have a personality disorder, but like some people think I do because I have such like a weird relation to people. Like I have either I trust you a lot, I tell you too much, or I don't tell you anything, or I'm like, I don't know. Like sometimes I'm like, I have to read the room so well, or like read this person so well, because I don't know what their motives are. And it's really hard for me to have like healthy relationships, even with my family, because I'm so fucked up from this, even, 13 years later. And it's just, it's instilled like, unhealthy patterns in relationships, sort of like, I don't know if I can trust them or not. And like, usually people mean well, but I don't know if they mean well. And sometimes people do not mean well, and I think they mean well. And it's like this whole, like, I don't know what to believe about anybody. And I'm sometimes left with myself. And like, thankfully I have the means to have a really good treatment team. And like, I've been to 16 or 17 institutions total from when I was 17 to when I finally got sober at 24. So I was just like being constantly institutionalized. And thankfully, I was an adult for a lot of it. But the worst of it was when I was not an adult, which is the 180 days I spent in the troubled teen industry. That was the worst. Even state-run psych wards were better than those places to me. I'm being serious. And I went to the mansions, right? So it's like, it's interesting because like I will hear people talk about wilderness and like it was good for me. Like and everyone has their own narrative in life and their own experience. But the thing is like the places that are being exposed for abuse, because they happen in these places, I've been there. It doesn't matter if it's a mansion in California or if it's like a wilderness boot camp in like Utah. Like they have the same mentality in these places where they want to break you down so much and they think they're doing their jobs well. Like a lot of the staff members think that this is the right thing to do. I've done some research. A lot of these places are run by people who, belong to some form of cults. I don't know if you agree. Like it has a culty aspect to it.
Definitely.
Yeah. And like, I'm not trying to say there's anything wrong. I don't want to get canceled for saying that cults are wrong, but like the thing about cults is like you can't really leave if you want to leave, kind of. That's like my gathering of it. Some.
Yeah, cults are bad. Cults are bad. I'll just say it. Cults are bad. Cults are fucking crazy, and they're fucking. I mean, like maybe there's a couple that are okay, but like the majority of them are just like brainwashing, and you can't leave, and you have to. They try and get your whole family involved, and then they're like, you have to leave everything behind. You have to give up your car, your house, leave your family behind, or else we don't trust that you're really in this. And so there's a lot of things that make it a cult, but.
Thank you for saying that because I was scared. Yeah, no, cults are bad. Cults are really bad. And, most of these places are run by people who either have the troubled teen industry, I think, is a cult.
It is.
I'll just
I
say,
mean, like maybe not every single one of them, but if you look at the way they hire people, how like the majority of a lot of these places, like they're owned by families or family members they'll either like inherit the business or they'll pass it down to their family members and they'll keep it in the family.
right.
So their secrets are kept in the family. I'm not going to say any names, but they operate. A lot of them operate like that, and a lot of them operate in smaller towns, so they can control fully the police force, the courts. Just everybody in the town thinks that that's where the majority of money is coming from. So why could it, even if it was bad, they're incentivized to not talk about it because it brings like 75% of the money to the economy. So there's a lot about it that really is cult.
Thank you for that information because that really simplified what it is, like why they stay open for so long. It's about money and power to me.
You just gotta follow the money, and usually it'll end right back up to where people they're fucking greedy and they don't care how they get money, even if it's by exploiting and abusing children and teenagers. And some adults go through adult programs and they still separate with this. So it's all about money, and it's really too bad and unfortunate.
It's really unfortunate. I mean, money is, you need it to live, but like this in 2023, I mean, this can't go on because I got lucky that somebody pulled me off that roof and I was able to be here today to talk to you about this stuff because I also want to touch on like Paris Hilton's memoir. So I was on vacation. I don't read that much. I just have like bad, learning disabilities. I just kind of like to like do whatever I'm doing. Like reading is too hard for me.
Yes, focused. I have ADHD too, so.
Yeah, it's hard, and it comes in all different forms. But I like was like, I'm just gonna read Paris Hilton's memoir. That seems like it's gonna be like a good beach read. It was just sort of like a universe. I'm spiritual, like a universe thing. I read her book, and I was like, what? Like I was like almost like no. Like as it was unfolding, and I read that we went to the same high school. I'm not trying to like be like, oh, like make it about me, but it was like eerily similar, our stories. And I was like, whoa, she got transported, and whoa, she went to this, like, oh my God. And the way she wrote about it was like so on, like, it was so on point about like what the industry was, and I had no idea. So that book educated me, and like the whole like Breaking Code Silence and like those documentaries is actually what made me realize that I was traumatized. And so there is sort of like I want to give like other survivors, like I had like a huge healing process with it where I was like, no, 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 like, but I went to a nice place with nice beds. No, no, no. I wasn't abused. I wasn't hit. I wasn't. And then for a while, I was like, wait, 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 why? We don't all have to have the same experiences to say that this traumatized us. Like, whatever happened to us in there is like something that we need to unpack, you know, collectively and individually. And like I don't believe like anybody's trauma is, you know, we all have like our own traumas and like whatever that means to you. So I was like diminishing my own trauma. And I didn't.
Competition, you know, it doesn't have to be, you know, like when people are like, oh, it doesn't matter even if you had a worse experience than that person, it doesn't fucking matter. Every person's experience is valid, in my opinion.
Yeah,
and like, we all went through trauma, and you know, like, okay, somebody could go through a place like you went through, right? And they could say, oh yeah, I had the worst time there. To them, it could have been the worst time. It could have been worse than everybody else's time, and everybody's experience is their experience. But I don't feel like it's healthy to say, you know, like, oh, my experience is better or worse, because it's just like everybody's experience is valid.
Yeah, I still grapple with that. I'm like, was my experience valid? And like I think that I've gotten to the point in my healing journey where I'm like, yes. I was like, yes, I was definitely 100% impacted by the troubled teen industry in a horrible way. And I need to speak up about it. I need to advocate, like, because like it's would be doing a disservice, like not to come on podcasts like this, like not to spread awareness, because some people have no fucking idea about like what's going on.
The average person doesn't even
right.
know these places exist.
Right. And when I like told my family, like, look, like people, like I didn't really want to like go into the statistics about the deaths, but that's like a real thing too. Like it's so it was been buried. Like it was in Paris's book. Like I don't know the exact year. I'm not sure if you know the year about when like this started to happen in the 1930s, 1920s. Like
I think it was around there somewhere. I don't know the exact date.
Me neither, but this has been going on for a long time. And obviously it's a huge moneymaker, multi-billion dollar industry that has been successful. I mean, but like when you actually talk to people who have like lost loved ones, they know it's not successful. You know what I mean? But like, you know, the money that they're bringing in, that's what really matters to most people.
Yeah.
So I just think it's you know, the fact that I did another 90 days of that, because I call it captivity. I think it's captivity. I think you're stripped of your rights. I think that they pick and choose how they want to deal with a client, and they saw me as they knew I came from a good family, and they thought that I was stupid. It's very similar to like how Paris tells her story. Like my family isn't, you know, they're not Hiltons, but my family, you know, I come from a good family. They knew that. They knew that my parents could pay for, you know, private care and extend, like they would be willing to do whatever to save their daughter. And that's almost every family, right? If somebody's struggling, they'll do what they can. And I don't think even all these people are like super affluent. Like a frantic family or parent will do what they can to help their child, and the industry knows this. So I had a family that could continue to send me away, and so I went again in California for 90 days, and I called it going through the motions. Like, this is what I would write in my journal. I'm going to go through the motions today. It was almost sick. It was like the way I thought it, but it was my survival, and I don't judge that version of me, because probably going through the motions was the smartest thing I could have done to graduate.
Yeah.
Because if you are, oh, I don't think I even finished the story about when I almost got secluded. So I was so angry, and I love animals. I'm like a huge animal person. Like the equine therapy was like one of the only things, even though we were there, I think we did equine for 6 hours every weekend. It was a long time to be with the horses. And we were just kind of, I love the horses there though. That was like my saving grace, was like the horses. Because I think equine is a common thread at some of these places, like animal therapy and equine. And that's
Was that at the first one, or was that at the second one, or was that but both?
both. But the first one we did like intense, like hours of equine. And I remember one day they were like, okay, today's activity, we're going to put chalk on the horses. And I was like, what? I was like, why are we putting chalk on the horses? I don't even know if that's good for them. But I did as I was told. And I almost have regrets about that sometimes, but it was a way, again, to get out. So sometimes you have to just, and this is another thing, like I'm interested to hear other stories about the people that got out, because there are people that have got out. I did not. I was there for the full time, and I left on my discharge date, thank God. So I did get out in a way, and then I was sent back. But I remember I was like, what the fuck is up with all this chalk? Because like in all our groups, like there was chalk, 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 chalk. And like I know that's like an art activity, but I did look into the program, the Sweetwater program in Cottonwood. And I'm really like, if there's a resource called Unsilenced, I think you know about it, where you can kind of like investigate where you were at. And when you're doing that, you have to have like a lot of self-care, because it's like it's telling you all about the facility that you were in. And like when you're a teen in there, you don't know the inner workings. You just know what you see, but you don't know what the staff is talking about. You don't know what they're, you know what I mean? Like there's so many secrets about like within the industry and the staff itself at the place, and like, you know, they don't want you to know what they're talking about. So apparently in 2006, a doctor at the facility was having homicidal thoughts or whatever about another doctor, and he was talking to his wife, and he was like, I'm gonna kill him. And the wife was like, oh no, like you're a God-fearing man, like you can't kill him. And like I guess in the document, it's online somewhere, I'm not making it up, he was like, I'll just have one of the drug addicts do it. It's so sick. And then I guess by the end of that story, if I have it correctly, because it's like so many names, he did end up killing himself. And then he covered his body. There was like pizza crust and like it's like horrible, like trigger warning again, like blood, pizza crust, and then like he covered his body in all this chalk. And I was like, now looking back on it, I'm like, I get that kids use chalk for art therapy and this, but like on our walk every morning, we did a 12-step walk. Most of the girls weren't alcoholics, by the way. They don't need to be going to 12-step meetings every day and doing a 12-step walk. I needed it, but they didn't. You know what I mean? So, yeah. But there was chalk everywhere. Like I don't remember what was written, but like I guess some of the patients would write things, or some of the staff members would write things. I just remember the 12 steps would just be like written on rocks throughout the walk. And we had to do that every morning at 6:45 in the morning, that walk. And it's creepy to me that there was chalk everywhere after reading what I read. And then I was also like, why didn't my dad read about this murder that happened related to the facility? Because my dad's a smart guy. I think that the industry just, you know, said, we found this pamphlet of this place. I looked at the pamphlet because I was on Unsilenced too. It looks lovely. It looks like an amazing place to send your kid. And that's a common thread too. Like if we're going to do art therapy, and like we did do art therapy, that's true. But, you know, we also did anger management. We did like classes about sex addiction, codependency. Like we were children. We maybe weren't ready for that kind of therapy at all. And nobody needs to be shamed in therapy. I'm sorry. Like that, I don't believe in that at all. So, like the shame thing, like the acting out, like the pretending, we did that in groups, like rape reenactments, like um just everything. Like they knew our whole history of what led us up to that point. And they tried to basically fuck us up, exhaust us, make us so mentally brainwashed that we now thought that this program was great. It was helping us. And I started to believe that. I was like, I was always like, get me the fuck out of here. That never changed. I wanted to go home. There was never a part of me, but some kids who were transported, I've talked to, they're like, I was so mad at my parents. I almost never wanted to look at them again. That wasn't like what I felt. Like I was like, I want to go home. But home wasn't safe either because after this, home was not safe either because when I got back to Manhattan, my friends would like be really concerned because I would always be like, I'm not going home. Like when I was too drunk, I was like, I can't go home. I need to sleep at your house. I need to sleep at someone else's house. People were so confused by that, but it was like it was a tactic. It was a survival tactic because like when I was in a certain shape, I did not want to walk into that building. I didn't want to even be near my apartment because I knew my parents could always, even when I turned 18, and it happened, if I did something crazy enough or I was too wasted or I concerned them, off I went because they had financial control over me. So I would run into random buildings in Manhattan and just tell the doorman. Like, and people sometimes helped me, sometimes they didn't because I was this drunk girl like who sounded insane, but I was like, I can't go home. Like, you don't understand. I would like tell these doormen I'm not going home. I'll give you like $10. Like, just let me like stay here for a little. The cab drivers I would talk to, I'd be like, don't bring me home. Like, I would I like want to like thank every New York City cab driver because the amount of times where like they just like sat and like talked to me, like they showed me a lot of kindness. So like there was always kindness in the world. And that was something I really needed to tap into because like when I experienced this horrible industry, I lost all faith in humanity for a second there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I can definitely understand that. Um, so when you went back, did you have to graduate again?
Yep.
Okay, so did they make you do another life contract?
So it's interesting because I was supposed to be graduating high school. So since I went back for the 60 days I lasted, thank God for my high school. I went to the Dwight School in New York. People can say what they want about that school, but they really cared about me and they wanted me to graduate. And they helped me. They sent me my assignments to rehab. Like I did school the second time around because it was time to do school. So Dwight sent me my assignments, like my teacher sent me like a senior sweatshirt and like I would do assignments so I could graduate from high school. And when I got out, they let me out after 90 days again. I was like, I'm going home. No, that's a lie. I didn't go home. I did 180 days away. So after 90, I kind of went, I can't do math when I was 17. They sent me to Silver Hill, which I will name because it was a good experience. For me, I had an amazing experience there. It was a safe place for me to land. It was closer to my family, which was lovely because I went to Arizona and California. I'm from New York. So like it was not easy for my family to come and see me. And when I was in Connecticut, my friends could come. They were really chill. I was in the adult unit. They put me in the adult unit. This was in 2000 because I had already been in treatment twice and I knew a lot about AA and I knew some of these adolescents didn't know this yet at Silver Hill. So at least the group that was there when I got there. So my doctor just told me, and it's not a secret. I mean, I was on the adolescent unit the adult unit at Silver Hill when I was 17. And I was like, whoa. And this is a point I bring up because it was like, you can have normal therapy in places like this. And normal meaning not shame-based attack. Like we had this thing called primary group where we would just like sit with a social worker and kind of talk about our day. You could give feedback if you wanted to. It was just like really, really chill. And I was like, what the fuck is this? I was like, this is not my experience of what these places are at all. And, you know, if you didn't want to go to a meeting, if you weren't feeling well, they didn't force you to do anything. And that was sort of like refreshing to me because it's like we're here for like empathy. We're in like really raw places in our lives when we need to go to these places. So like we don't need to be forced to do anything. At least in my opinion. Like I think that there is like some level of like structure is good for people and like having like a passion and hobbies and like all of that is good. But like I don't think anybody, if they're in a place in their life, like should be forced to do anything. And that was such a pervasive part of the troubled teen industry was like having no choice. So like when I got to the adult unit when I was 17, I was so grateful to see that there are places that exist where like groups are chill. You like, you know, talk about like we did a lot of like dialectical behavioral therapy, which I like. Not everyone has to like it, but I like it. I think it gives you a set of tools to deal with life, and it's I don't know, I like it. But like I just thought that it was a good experience, and I knew what meds I was taking. I saw the prescription bottles. Like I, you know, my family could come anytime they wanted. Like I could be alone with them. Like I was kind of like, what the fuck is this? So I was exposed when I was 17 to a healthy form of getting treatment, which is,
Okay.
I think is important to mention because people, especially in today's world, where a lot of people are losing hope, like financially struggling horribly, like it's almost impossible in today's world. And I'm so lucky I have the resources I do to like succeed with like just even your mental health. Like it's so hard to get your medicines and your script filled and this and this and this. And it's like, ugh, like the system in general, it's like there's a lot of systemic issues in the mental health field that I think should be talked about because, you know, everyone to some degree struggles. And like I don't know. I wish it wasn't so complicated, but of course, it is. Of course, everything in life is complicated, but I wish it was a little more simple, you know, for
Exactly.
people to get help if they need it.
Okay, so I'm a little confused. So you went to the 90 days, the first program, 90 days, second program, and then 180 days in the one that you said was decent?
Okay, so I spent 90 days in Arizona. I was home for 60, and then I spent 90 in California, and then the California place wanted me to go to a therapeutic boarding school or stay there. And I said to my parents, no, like I'm going to college. I got accepted to college. I found out I got accepted into college when I was away. And I was like, I'm going to college. I have to finish school. Like I'm not doing this shit. Like I'm not, I have things to do. Like I was always kind of like, people thought it was bratty, but it was more like, I was so angry. Like I was like very like, I was usually wrong about what was good for me or not, but like and who knows if that's part of the brainwashing because I still feel brainwashed to this day. It's like I like gaslight myself.
I would say it is.
Yeah. I gaslight myself. Like I'm like I'm crazy. I'm like and it's like not funny at all, but I have to laugh because I mean, it's a little funny to gaslight yourself. I don't know.
Yeah.
I that might be problematic to say, but sometimes you have to find humor or else you'll lose your mind. So, it was recommended I go to finish high school in Montana, Utah. Thank God I never went to those states because I've heard horror stories too. Um, and I said no, I'm going back to New York and I'm going to do tutoring and I'm going to college. And my mom and dad said fine, but a condition of you going home is there. Silver Hill was it's called the TLP, Transitional Living Program. So my parents thought it was really like a transitional living program, and like in ways it is, but like it was a rehab. So like when I got there, so I did 90 days in Newport Beach, and then I did another 90 in New Canaan. So I did 180 plus 90. I can't do math in a troubled teen center.
Okay. I just wanted to clear it up a little bit more.
I know it can get a little confusing. My story jumps all over the place.
It's all good. It's all good. And then what happened after you got out? Let's go into that a little bit, and then I just had a couple or some questions for you or whatnot.
Yeah, I'll try and sum it up. So what happened after I had another suicide attempt? I tried to lay down in the middle of traffic in New York City. Um, that was crazy. I guess I watched too much Skins because there was like a scene in Skins UK or like Effie. I like always like idolized when I was a young girl these like troubled characters on TV, and then like all of it happened to me. It was wild. And I guess like she had this idea to like kill herself in that way, and I was like, oh, I was so wasted. I was like, I'm gonna go lay down in the middle of the street. It was so horrible. Like I feel so bad for that young version of myself that like I know it's a TV show, but like I was idolizing kind of like things that were really toxic. And so, like, of course, love music and love art and love movies and relate to whatever you want to relate to. But like when I got drunk enough, like I thought it was like a good idea to do something like that. And
Yeah.
so I hope that's like, I give a trigger warning to all that too, because it's a horrible idea. Like, don't ever do that. But that when I was in a blackout, that's when it would happen. It was like I got triggered, I blacked out. So the darkness, like people didn't want to be my friend anymore. And that was something that was really hard for me because I was always like really value friendships still to this day. I think, you know, your girlfriends or like or whatever that means to you, your group of friends are the most important thing. Like they're family too. And um I was starting to lose friends. Like, and you know, at first people were happy to have me back. And then it started to become Emily's, you know, ruining the night. Emily is, it's not funny, but Emily is, you know, running on the street barefoot, doing this, like trying to throw herself into traffic. I once punched my best friend. I mean, I apologized to her. I heard the story though, because I was in a blackout. I was like, why did I punch her? Because this was something that talks about the like echoes the darkness of it all. Because like people like we were young, I get it. Like they don't have the understanding of like mental health and addiction. At now we're 30. Like my generation, like we're 30. Like we understand that people go through dark places. Like but back then no one knew what the fuck was going on with me. And I didn't know until I went to like AA more and like people would talk about like getting aggressive when they were drunk. And I carried so much shame about it because I was like, but I'm a female and I'm this and that and I'm punching people and like what the fuck is wrong with me? And I remember like I think the story was I was just so wasted that she said like it's time to go home. Like the night is over. We're not going out anywhere else. And I just like punched her. And I loved her, you know, like she was one of my best friends. And the next, I went to a psych ward. Someone called the cops. And because of the privilege, I mean, I should have gone to jail for assault. I didn't. I have a lot of gratitude. I was never incarcerated, and I really should have been because my addiction was not even addiction. My mental health, my whole mind was so fucked from those places that I did things that could have gotten me arrested. Absolutely. And I went to psych wards instead. That's just my story, and I am lucky in that regard. But like psych wards, you know, aren't the best. But like I should have gone to jail for a long time, and I didn't. Um, and I guess that was just because I had things to do. Like I guess you know. I the universe or whatever you believe in, like I believe they said no, like you need to like find recovery and help others. And so that's what I'm doing. But I should have definitely gone to jail. I mean, I punched somebody in the face. I mean, that's assault. And it was I assume it was hard because it was like this weird thing. Like I was not really the most active person, but I would hear like when I would like run away from people, it would be like a marathon Olympian sprinter like when I was in a blackout. And I was like, where the fuck did that come from? Like, how did I run that fast? I'm not like, I smoke like packs of cigarettes a day, but like I ran. Like, I think it was just like that instinct, that flight or flight thing I was talking about. Like, I didn't want anyone, like, I was like, anything but these places, anything but captivity, anything but this. So I'm running. Like,
Yeah.
so yeah. So anyway, that's kind of like a theme of like what happened after. It was like blackouts. I punched my sister in the face. So like the aggression was something that I was like, where? Like, it would only come out when I was drunk and then in a blackout. And my parents called it episodes. It's not funny. I just laugh because I have no other choice. But Yeah, they called it episodes, and I was like, what are these episodes? Like, I didn't have a therapist that knew the answers to that, and I unpacked it later, and I think what it was, why I got aggressive, and why I became so crazy, and why I started running, and why I would act out, just because like all of this attack therapy made me want to act out 100% more. And like some people don't have that experience. They become more reserved, or like they just want to stay to themselves. And that was part of my story too. For a year, I shut off my phone, a year. And I just lived at my parents' house and like ordered in Seamless and didn't talk to anybody. So that was part of my story too, because I was like, if I go out and I drink, I know myself and I'm going to be, I'm going to be institutionalized or put in jail or dead. So I stayed home for a year. And so isolation is part of my story too. So it's kind of complicated. It affected me in so many ways because like I really wanted to be free and social and be with my friends and like have that freedom, especially when I turned 18. Me turning 18, it was a little delusional. Like I thought it all was going to end there. And it didn't. But I was like, they can't do this to me anymore when I'm 18.
Yeah.
They
Well,
can't.
it'd be harder anyways.
Right. That was a common misconception. There were girls in the facility who were over 18.
Yeah.
And I was confused. I was like, wow, you can leave at any time though, right? And like, I don't really even remember her answer. There was one girl I talked to. I was like, why are you here if you're 18? So that's another thing. And there would also just be like really inappropriate stuff that would happen. And
Like
all of
grooming? Did you witness any grooming in any of the facilities, like staff on student or student on student?
I noticed really poor boundaries.
Okay.
In Arizona, it was worse because it wasn't so much the staff. I think they knew better. I mean, because I think for my particular program, it was an Ivy League tuition to go there. So they were dealing with really wealthy, affluent families. So I think the staff knew better than to abuse us.
Okay.
But when the adults, there was one or two adults while I was there that, like when I was saying earlier, like I hope it doesn't sound egotistical. It was just part of my story. They would just stare at me all the time. And I was sort of just like, this is making me uncomfortable, but I'm not going to complain because I don't want to complain. But I didn't really stare back, but I was like, kind of like, I almost thought that the adults could help me.
Yeah.
I actually remember that we would try and plot to get cigarettes from them. We would try, not even the males, the females, it didn't matter. We wanted the adults to help us out. But I did notice that there were definitely staff that was inappropriate with us. Yeah. They would make comments that, human services professionals should not make. My therapist was really weird. I think I kind of blocked that out a little. And he would say things to me, like he would tell me I had all of these issues, like tell me. He'd be like, you're codependent. You have an eating disorder. You have this, you have that. Meanwhile, I did not have an eating disorder. I drink like 6 Coca-Colas a day. And I'm not judging anyone who does. Like everyone struggles with what they struggle with, but like that wasn't my story. And they were telling me it was. And I was like, no. Like, but like no matter how much I spoke, it was like almost like those dreams. I don't know if it's common. Like I have these dreams all the time where it's not like transportation dreams, but it's like I'm talking and I'm like screaming and I'm like, nobody can hear me. And I think that goes back to what I lived through in those industries because like it doesn't matter what the fuck you say. No one's there to help you. You need to help yourself for the most part.
Okay, so you turn 18 and whatnot, and then how did you get into counseling and whatnot? Like, what led towards that?
Sorry, I'm laughing. So it was just a huge plot twist because I was like one of the most unhinged people ever. And then I decided to pursue this career. And I own the unhinged now. I'm like, you know what? Like it happened. Like I can't do anything to change it. Like through the 12 steps, I was able to say sorry for what I did that was, hurt people. Because I never want to hurt people. That's not funny. But like some of the other behaviors, like I used to walk around up the Upper East Side barefoot, you know, with my like cigarette and my like iced coffee and like a sweat pajamas. And it was Upper East Side. Like everyone was so confused. Like it's really conservative. So I laugh at that part because I was like just owning my eccentricities or whatever. So yeah, I eventually, after fighting and fighting and fighting sobriety and that idea, I was like, no, because this is my only coping skill that works.
Yeah.
And I don't know if other people can relate to that. Like I clung on to substances so hard because I was like, there is nothing else that relieves the pain in this way.
Yeah.
There just isn't. And I think I would go as far as to say that marijuana really, really helped me for a time.
Yeah, that's all I do is I smoke weed.
Yeah, I
I
get.
used to do hard drugs.
Well, congratulations on, you know, harm reduction. That's like a big deal.
You
Um,
too. You too. Congrats on you.
Thank you. Thank you. I really try not to judge anybody's path, but like complete sobriety was my path. Like I had to slowly like realize that each substance didn't serve me. And
Yeah.
like my last relapse or whatever you want to call it, I was never sober, but I kept going to institutions because my parents, when I would have like some sort of mental breakdown, which was often, I mean, I've been in 2 psychoses, and that's scary. I mean, you don't really know what's going on. And the second one, I thought the first one I was doing cocaine, and I thought that it was like a cocaine induced psychosis. And then the second psychosis I went through, I was just smoking weed. So then I was like, okay, like my brain can't handle anything. And psychosis is dark. Like, but it's also made me more cautious. It's made me more careful. I don't know if that's a good or a bad thing, but like it just it taught me something. It was like some sort of like lesson. And it wasn't a good lesson. I didn't like getting that lesson, but I'm grateful for it anyway, because it got me to the point where I was like, you know what? I've been through enough. If I need to just stop everything to stay out of being institutionalized, then I will. And at 24, on March 16th, 2017, I stopped everything and I never picked it up again. And knock on wood, I don't do it ever again because it just doesn't help me. I
Yeah.
don't I don't belong in an institution anymore, you know, like
Yeah.
I'm getting my degree, I work, I have a full life today. I have like a lot of memories with my like genuine friendships, like, you know, my friends in New York, like I have a lot of love for them. We don't really talk anymore. Some of us do and some of us don't, but I'm just saying like I started a new kind of like path for myself and it works for me. And I don't want to ever be like captive in a psych ward or an institution again. So I do what I have to do, like to avoid that. And like that's just like basic self-care for me. Like it's like, you know, don't if something is just, you know, not serving you and putting you in situations that you don't want to be in anymore, then like maybe you should make a change. And that's like what I did.
Exactly. Amen to that. Okay. With phases, how many phases were there in the program?
3.
3. Okay. And did you have to vote up? Did you have to get your peers' approval to get up to the next level, or was it just when they thought you were ready? Was it point based?
I think you had to write a paper, an essay, and then I think you did have to get peer approval. Yeah.
Okay. And was it points based, or was it just when they decided you're ready?
Points based.
Okay.
Wait, I can grab my journal because I think I have it here. Like really.
Yeah.
I think that this journal was sent to me by my mother because they wouldn't give me one this nice.
And then the daily sheets were like you would either earn points or lose points, correct? Is that how it would go?
Earn points or lose points. And then they would put these like pretty drawings, and then they would write like a quote of the day, and then like they would write like we couldn't go in each other's rooms. Oh, just to show you, like this is like me trying to like write to my parents. Like it took me forever. Like, dear mom and dad, dear mom and dad. Like this is before I was able to like, oh my God, I hope I don't have anything super private on there. It's like I would try and like send codes. Like I would write these like really long letters because I had nothing else to do. And I kept like underlining things. Like I would try and like send coded messages to explain that I was being abused. And I think one thing that was important was, if you were concerned for me before, be concerned for me now. You can't even fathom the pain that I'm in now. So then P.S. let me come home. I'm so hurt, in all caps. So the face thing I know is in here somewhere because I just would like start these letters. I wouldn't finish them. It just like shows the trauma.
Yeah.
But this is all letters. There's some journal entries. But there is like I would do countdowns. I don't know if anyone else would like write down like until phase 2, like I would
Down this.
yes. I would count down the days that until I could be on the next phase. Yeah, I wrote my dad a letter. It's really weird for me to write you this. I prefer that other people didn't have to read it. It's so sad.
Yeah.
Want to know what? This journal wasn't private either.
Oh yeah, they looked through everything.
Of course, and I wrote, "Take me home." This was just to myself. It's so sad. Yeah, and then I have a list of reasons as to why you should let me come home.
I wrote those. I wrote one of those.
It's like long. I tried to make it like look good. It didn't matter.
Yeah.
All these letters, like I started, I couldn't finish them. I didn't send them. Like, it's so sad. Like, I'm able to like sort of detach from it because it was so long ago, but it's sad. It's like I couldn't get my family to know here. So this is I would do like phase countdowns. This is just one journal. So this is like the first 30 days, which is why it's like kind of chaos because I was so confused. But I guess 14 more days until phase 2, if I earned it, which I didn't really understand. I just thought that I was going to just get there just because I could. But I guess I was going to be on phase, I got there June 26th, and I had phase 2 July 14th would have been phase 2, which means I could write my family then.
Yeah.
So that's a while in like my mind.
Yeah.
Each day was a long time.
Yeah.
So each day was horrible to wake up in a environment where you have to do as you're told. It's like prison, but a nice.
I feel like prison is actually better though.
Really, it's a lot of people have said that to me too.
Yeah.
Why do you say that?
Why do I say it?
Oh.
I mean, there's just like, I mean, for one, when you go to jail, you know what you fucking did, okay? Like, for a long time in there, I didn't even realize what the fuck I had done to deserve to be sent there. I still think I was just being a regular teen. So for one, like you don't get to choose to go there, but you made the choice to do the action that ended you up there. So at least you know why you're there. You get 3 meals a day. The food, you know, I haven't been to prison, so I don't really know, but like just like you get 3 meals a day, like you get to. I just feel like you have more fucking freedom in a way in fucking jail. You get like to be outside sometimes, depending on the prison. Like you don't. I guess you get like you got outside time, but you had to be like working out, like you had to be like doing push-ups or whatever. So it's like actual like rec time. I don't know. There's a lot of arguments for that, but
that argument that you just made makes a lot of sense to me. And you can talk to your friends about things without getting in like big trouble.
Exactly. Talk to people. Like you don't need to be a certain level. Like you get your medications for the most part. You know, for the most part, you get your medications. Or if you're not on medications, they're not going to force it on you. There's a lot of different things. But yeah.
Thank you for saying that. Because I guess another common thread is like the invalidation that we feel.
Oh yeah.
And as survivors, it's like people, like if I were to tell some people like that what we just talked about, how these places are worse than jail, they'd be like, no fucking way.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's sort of like, and okay, fine. Like, and that's sort of like where I've come to in my journey is like acceptance. Like, and if you have not lived this, it's near impossible to understand how horrible it is. So like when people don't understand, it's not so much of like anger. It's like, okay, until you've lived it, like you cannot comprehend what it's like. So like I don't expect you to, you know?
Yeah,
So
definitely.
I,
Go ahead.
I just want to raise awareness because once people do realize how horrible it is, they want to do something about it. Absolutely. So
Exactly.
yeah,
How is the food there?
it was good.
Is it
Well,
good?
actually, we joke. Some of me and my friends joke because we had chefs, but we would just like make the most weirdest meals. Like we would have like we loved our pita and cheese. We had like a microwave. We would make pita and cheese almost every day. And then we got frozen yogurt and we would put hot chocolate mix. They didn't like they wanted us to gain weight, actually.
Oh yeah, yeah.
So when we did stuff like that, even if it was like weird, like to put hot chocolate mix on frozen yogurt, like weird is like, I don't know, abnormal to eat it like that. So, but we would do stuff like that. And so that was that there were chefs, they would have us like at Cottonwood, you would like they had like pasta station and then you like told them what you wanted on it. So like when my parents came for family forum, they were like, this place is great. You know what I mean? Like there's a chef, they have like, you know, all these amenities, like it's a hotel.
And that's what I want people to understand listening to this is like, yeah, it might look pretty on the outside, but really it's what matters on the inside that counts. So it's just like what's actually happening on the inside of that program, you know, because outside appearance is like it looks great, or you know the food's great or whatever, but it's like yeah, but we're still being traumatized and abused and brainwashed the entire time. It just has pretty and flashy colors, and you know makes it look like it's okay.
Yeah.
So yeah, just want people to know that just because it might look or sound like it was, oh, it must not have been as bad. I guarantee it probably will.
Oh no. Oh,
No.
sorry. Pause for a second. Yeah, no, I get if you were a survivor of this industry, um, I believe you.
Yeah.
Just believe you. It's just like um I think that I spent like so much time like being invalidated, not believed, told I was crazy, told I was delusional, and like I've like had enough of that narrative. And I'm 30 years old now. It's like, no, I went through what I went through. I was there.
Yeah.
Brainwashing does fuck with your head a lot. But like when you come to the point in the healing process where you're able to kind of like look at it for what it was and like look at the facts, which is something my dad tells me to do because he's very logical and I'm very emotional. The facts were I was abused every single day.
Yeah.
So, and I couldn't, there was no way out. And um, I only saw one girl's mom who was just like a cool mom. She was like, my daughter's leaving. And I remember I was like, I'm so jealous. I was like, I'm happy for her, but I was so jealous because I was like, my parents would never. And I only saw one girl get pulled out the 90 day, the whole time I was in those facilities. One girl got pulled out by her family. Everyone else had to do their time, which is
Yeah.
like, perfect, do your time, you know.
What was the longest you've seen somebody be there for or heard about?
So actually, I think one of my closest friends who I lost touch with from Cottonwood, she went to therapeutic boarding school, and I haven't really kept up with her, but like apparently she's doing well. She just got married. Like these success stories, like so okay, like a lot of people, the answer to that is like we all got sent away again, or like we went to therapeutic, or we died. Or sorry, like I'm alive, but like they killed themselves, they overdosed. There was like very, and then there's some success stories where they like turned it into something beautiful and they have like a beautiful family and they work and they like it really, you know, it's so difficult. Like some people, my addiction got gnarly. I almost overdosed and died. I had suicide at times, but some people were like, after that, I'm gonna fucking like chill for a second.
Yeah.
And so it really depends on like what you took from it. But there were suicides, there were deaths, And then there's also like these success stories. Like I went on a reunion trip with a couple of friends and they're doing amazing. And I'm so happy for them. Like I could almost cry. I'll try not to though, because I don't.
Oh, that's fine, dude.
I don't really like to waste my tears on the industry, but it's more gratitude tears that like my friends were able to get out of that alive and like make their experiences into something beautiful and like they're at peace with it. I still have a lot of anger.
Yeah.
So like I'm in like a different space. But you know, trauma and healing and all this, it's so like not linear. So like wherever you're at with it, you're at with it. But like I'm just really happy to see that they made it. And not made it in terms of like money or like prestige or success, but like they made it. They made it out of this and they found happiness and joy in like their lives. And that's what makes me happy. So yeah, you know, not all of us did make it. Some of them I have no idea where they are. I can't find them on social media anymore. I don't know what happened to some of them. I deeply care about those girls, but I don't know. And I don't want to like push it because maybe they don't want to be found right now.
Yeah. So
Find me one day because I love them.
oh yeah. So was anybody? So were people there longer than 90 days, or was it always 90 days?
So they tried to extend stays. Some people wanted to stay longer. It's complicated. And then some people they referred to like a sister facility or another, like whatever, however industry works. Like, you know, usually it was Montana or Utah, but my place was in Arizona, Tucson, Arizona. So I don't remember. Like I shut down the therapeutic boarding school thing so effing quickly that I don't even remember where they wanted to send me. I just said it's not an option.
Okay. Because what I'm wondering is they used to do these things called, at the place I got sent to, was they would do something called a wake up call sometimes, and then so they'd send a kid, and I saw it happen to like several kids. They would send them there for like 3 months, and then their parents would pull them. So I'm wondering if like if the program you can send
wake up call.
Okay, so generally in the program I was at would be a year longer, right, to graduate, but that's if you're perfect. So they would also do these things at the program I was at where they would have kids sent there for like 2 to 3 months, and it would be what they called a wake up call. Like, if you keep on acting up at home, we're going to send you here and you're going to have to actually graduate.
Okay.
I know that you graduated, but I'm wondering if
that makes sense now. Okay.
Program was sort of like a stepping stone into, so like they do 90 days and then they'd reevaluate, see if they felt like you were ready to come back home, or send you out to another facility. So I'm wondering if it.
That's exactly what that was. Yes, it was a wake up call.
Okay.
Thank you for putting that into words. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because the referrals were always therapeutic boarding school.
Yeah. It doesn't mean that you didn't have a valid experience. You totally have a valid experience. I'm just saying that there are cases.
No, you're not invalidating it. I'm just saying that's a cool way, not a cool way, a good way to put what it was. It was a fucking wake up call.
Yeah. Okay, interesting. How about your parents? I know you touched on it a little bit, but have you talked to your parents about this? Do you think you could ever forgive them? For me, I've forgiven them, but I'll never forget what they did to me. I just don't want to hold on to that negative energy in my life personally. So where are you with your parents? Have you tried to discuss it with them?
This is a hard one to answer. So I love my parents so much. They're lovely. They have done, I said it from the beginning of this interview, they're amazing people. I will never, ever forgive them for the transportation.
Okay.
I just won't. So no, but forgive is like a strong word. I forgive them for so much else. I love them. Their forgiveness is like in my heart. Like I'm so spiritual. I almost feel bad that I just said that, but that's like what came to my heart. I don't think I can forgive them for that part. No.
And that's totally fine.
But I forgive them like in the grand scheme of things. Absolutely. Like I love them. The transportation, it makes no sense to me how that could be okay. Other than that, getting me help, showing up to visit me, writing me letters. They were so lovely and so supportive. So like there is tons of forgiveness in my heart to them. But when it comes to involuntary transport, I want to advocate for that so strongly that I will say that like that is absolutely unacceptable. So like, no, I can't forgive them for that.
Okay.
If that makes sense. But I love them so much.
Let's see. Have you discussed it with them though?
Yeah.
Okay.
So I have talked to my parents about it, and you know, they almost sometimes get frustrated because I'm like, but do you understand how bad it was? But do you understand how bad it was? But do you understand how bad it was? And I get their frustration because like they weren't in the car. They weren't in the plane. They didn't, they weren't the one who experienced it. So of course they're not going to know what it's like. But for the longest time, I just assumed that they had to have known how, like by proxy, how traumatic it was. And then I thought about it deeper, and it's like they were there too, and they heard their daughter scream. They heard me say, help me, get me. Like, so they love me, they adore me. I'm like, we have a really nice relationship. That's traumatic for them too.
Yeah.
It's like, that's the whole point. And I almost feel bad for saying I'll never forgive them for the transportation. That's just like, honestly, the first thing that came out of my heart. But like, I do forgive them for everything, for all of it. I changed my mind. Like they were deeply manipulated and deeply mind fucked and brainwashed too. I just don't think they want to look at it, and that's okay. They have gotten to the point in their lives where they're in their 60s, they're enjoying their lives, they're in a different phase. Like I'm 30, like I'm in my 60s, maybe I won't want to take a look at the past so much. You know what I mean? Like I'm only doing this kind of stuff to inflict change for the future.
Yeah.
And like my story just so happens to be a channel to do that. It's not like I really love to harp on the past, but like this is my story, and if it helps save these kids in 2023, then then I'm doing it. Um, but like when it comes to my parents, like they have like a completely different narrative. They were frantic parents who had a kid that was going to die, because that was my story, and they wanted me to get help, and they did the very best they could to help me. But like when I sometimes get angry because I'm like that night on the rooftop, I was trying to die, like, and after a suicide attempt, like I was trying to send a message, but like that didn't, it's a really selfish message to send, and I don't agree with what I did. It was an attempt that wasn't successful, but still, I just don't agree with what I did. But I was under the influence of drugs and alcohol. But then I wish like after that happened, they didn't send me away again. But like that's the way it happened. I have to have acceptance. You know what I mean?
Exactly. How about runners? Was there any runners from the facility? Anybody trying to run?
Yeah, yes and no. There was not so much running. There was like trying to get under the system. Like there would be like, can I send out, like, help me send out this postcard, help me get quarters to the payphone, help me do like we were plotting escapes, plotting to get cigarettes, plotting to get like, stuff like that. But I don't recall anybody running away. And if there were runaways, we weren't told about it. We were so sheltered from all of that at that place. Like, and I like when a girl went to one, which was seclusion, there's a seclusion room at that facility.
Solitary confinement?
Yes, seclusion, solitary confinement. I think it means the same thing. I'm not sure. Um, each place is different, but like it's confinement. Yeah, 1-to-1. And then when you get back, a staff member is constantly with you, and you cannot be alone with the group. You eat separate. You sit at your own table.
Okay.
And then I guess when you like they think that you're okay enough to go back, or they make that decision, then you can join the group again. But we can't talk to you about it, and you can't talk to us about whatever the fuck happened in there. So like that's why I'm so none the wiser about what happens when people run, when people, like, I know that when people misbehave, they get repercussions.
Yeah.
They get please improves. They get the points taken off. They can't go to a different phase. They have to move to a different room. They, get sent to a boarding school faster. But I don't remember seeing anybody run. No.
Okay. What was the worst What was the hardest part about being in these places, and how did you deal with it?
That's such a difficult question to answer, honestly, because I think the hardest thing for me was being cut off from the world. That was the hardest thing for me because I'm a really social, outgoing, like being around people is like what heals me, like music heals me, like not being able to have the simplest things in life, like music and like privacy, like being stripped of all of those things. That was the worst thing for me because I was just left with the only time I had private time was when I showered. Nobody watched me, to my knowledge. I mean, on the unit, it was all female staff except for some of the groups were ran by males, and the guy who gave us our meds was a dude, and our doctors was a dude. Sorry, a guy. And so I it's just so creepy. It gives me the chills. It's like being stripped of like your humanity pretty much. And then by the time you get out of there, like I remember like I got into the car and like the cab in New York, and I was seeing like my old environment that I grew up in for 17 years, and I was in like culture shock of my home. So it was just really like that was just the worst, was like the being captive and then knowing that my family was like laughing together and having dinner and like calling their friends and like living a normal life. Well, I'm crying on the shower floor, like so no one will hear me, so I don't get like, and no one knows I'm sad. That was the worst part of it for me. It was like life going on, the world going on, and then like I was in this horrible, and it sounds really selfish, but it's like kind of just how I feel. Like everybody was like having an amazing summer and like had freedom and like laughter. I to an extent I had laughter, but like freedom, and I didn't. And there was no way out to get it back. I had to earn it.
Okay. And so did you just journal, or how did you end up dealing with that?
I wrote a lot of letters. That was probably the biggest, was letter writing. And I would write letters to people I knew I couldn't send it to. It was more of like a therapeutic thing for me. But like they didn't, I think they told me to write a letter to my addiction. And like that's like a normal thing, I guess. But I was like really young, so like whatever. But like I loved letter writing. Sorry, I have really bad ADD, so I kind of pivot. But like letter writing, music, like checking out those CDs. Um, honestly, like nature, like sunsets, like animals, like frogs, like I poured tea in a frog. That's why I almost got a 1-to-1. I think I said that, but I love animals. The horses, my friends that really had my back for the most part, as much as we could. Like I was grateful for that. Those are my saving graces. And like it taught me to really appreciate like this, your morning cup of coffee, and like being able to like make that on your own. And like, because I didn't have that when I was a teen. So like it, like that kind of thing, it did, like I think I said this earlier, it just gives you a lot of perspective into like the little things in life are really important, because not everyone has the ability. Like when you're in jail, like you're kind of told what to do, but I like if you want to get like a hot chocolate or something, I don't know, like a a commissary or whatever. I've never been to jail. You can like do it if you like can afford it. I couldn't do any of that. I had to earn everything. So like it gives me so much gratitude. Um, and like we had to write gratitude lists, like they forced us, and I was like, all right, well, I'm just gonna like make shit up. It was so hard for me to write those lists. And today I have like so much genuine gratitude that I like was able to like find myself and my way after that experience. And I'm really proud of you as well for like making this podcast and like speaking up about your experiences. And like this is an amazing way to help survivors. And so I'm grateful for this and for you. And yeah.
Thank you so much. I just got 2 more questions for you. One, if you could go back in a time machine and not go through these places, would you do it, and why?
I would do it all again, actually. I don't know why. It just made me a more empathic human being. And the fact is, I'm just one person who went through this. And so I would go back and do it all again if it means putting an end to it. Yes.
Okay. Okay. And is it your belief that these places should or even could be fully regulated, or is it your belief that they should all just be shut down?
Okay, so that's a good question. I think that as someone who needed help as an adolescent, especially in today's world, because like TikTok and all this like this shit, like for lack of a better term, didn't exist when I was a teen. Like social media was just starting up. I feel like the pressures of society and like mental health and like people, the world is just like really, it's a chaotic place. And like if people need a place to go to heal, absolutely they should go. If they're adolescents, like it just needs to be a place where they're met with empathy. There's no abuse acceptable. Like if a staff member does anything like remotely inappropriate, they should be fired. So like I think like there of course should be places for people to get treatment if they need it, if they're under 18. They just have to run it regulated and like if like the rules of the staff are not honored, then the staff needs to be out. Because like
Yeah.
these kids like do need help. So that's my opinion. Yeah, absolutely. If you need help as a teen, like I'm a huge advocate for asking for help if you need it and like getting help and like going away to heal. And like there's tons of places that are very regulated that exist. And like my goal is to just shut down the ones that exist that are run by this troubled teen industry. You know, if that does that answer your
Sure.
question? Yeah.
That totally answers the question.
Okay.
All right. Is there anything else you want people to know about you or your experience, or anything you might tell a parent thinking about sending their kid to a place like this?
I think I talked a lot about my own experience. So when it comes to the parents, I think I would say that you really need to do your due diligence if your child needs help. Like you need to really research the place. Like there are resources available and alternatives available to involuntary transport. Because like let's be honest, not every kid's gonna want to go voluntarily, but they also don't want to be grabbed from their bed in the middle of the night. So there needs to be like just a lot of thought put into this. Like I know when you're frantic, like it's so hard not to make rash decisions and just be like, you take care of it because I'm in a trauma state too. But like I will say that the troubled teen industry ruined my relationship with my parents for many years. And it's not something that should be taken lightly at all. And like I am so grateful we were able to all collectively heal from it. Um Parents, the message I would say to parents is like, please, like really research what goes on. Like unsilenced.org is something I think is wonderful. Because you can investigate. And that's a resource. Meg Applegate, I think, is the main. I think that's an amazing resource. And it was her birthday yesterday, so happy belated birthday to her. And I think that if for parents, like go on that website and like if someone's recommending a place for your child, just look it up and see if there's anything that worries you. And to also like, you know, we're in 2023, so like if you Google these places, even like, if there's abuse happening in them, people are talking about it because of this movement that we survivors are doing. So I do think that like breaking code silence and like all of these resources are now available for families to get their child care and offer resources, alternatives, and like, yeah, there's no need to send them to these types of places anymore.
Amen to that. All right. Well, thank you guys so much for tuning into this episode. If you've liked this far in the video, please like, or if you've watched this far in the video, please like it, please share it, and make sure you hit the notification bell for all updates. Also, I wanted to say to you, if you ever want to do a part 2, or if the other places you went to end up shutting down, crossing fingers, in the future, then you can come back on for part 2 and we'll talk about those. So.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me.
No problem. So have a wonderful day wherever you guys are at, and we will see you next time.